Mother, tell us a story.
A story about what?
About us. Our story.
It's all about black love, black crime, blacks love, blacks shine, blacks cry, blacks march, the black story torn all apart, told to us through slavery, just 10 black leaders so we can see a partial truth, their perspective, the whole black story stays so neglected, untold, unrung, untaught, unsung, black hoops, black loops, black troops, black roots, black groups, black salute, black stars, black cars, black jokes, black votes, black hope, black's dope.
This is the story of our lives. This is our story. This is the story of our lives. This is our story. This is the story of our lives. This is our story. This is our story. This is our story.
It's all about black truth, black youth, black cause, black flaws, black tours, black laws, black power, blacks cower, black change, black's pain, black pride, black lives, black panther, black answers, black rivals, black survival, blacks thrive, blacks rise, black fame, blacks change, black solution,
Evolution,
black family,
solidarity,
blacks reign,
off the chain.
black trust, black lies, black unity, black scrutiny, black glory, our story. It's all about you and me, and me and you, and how we see our story true to us, not through another's eyes. It's ours. We have to stand and rise. Come good. You and me and you, and how we see our story true to us, not through another's eyes. It's ours. We have to stand and rise. Black behavior, black saviors, black movements, black improvement, black omission, black tradition, black community, black beauty, black friends, black foes, black trends, black froze, black names, black's gain, black skin, black kin, black college, black knowledge, black humility, black civility, black poverty, black sovereignty, black creation, black civilization, black solution,
Evolution,
black family,
solidarity,
black's reign,
off the chain.
black glory, our story.
This is the story of our lives. This is our story. This is the story of our lives. This is our story. This is the story of our lives. This is our story. This is our story. This is our story. This is the story of our lives. This is our story. This is the story of our lives. This is our story. This is the story of our lives. This is our story. This is our story. This is our story.
Yes, indeed. Welcome to the Hip Hop Alliance Black History Conference. And we are doing this obviously at the 50th anniversary of hip hop, in which one of our discussions here today is going to be about the history of hip hop. And that history, as everyone probably on this call probably already knows, this history has been debated, contested, thrown away, brought back, remixed. But we're going to try to get some clarity today with some of the people that we actually have with us. I'm shouting right now. We have Melle Mel, Grandmaster Melle Mel with us today. We have Grandmaster Caz, C-A-Z, with us today. We have Dancing Doug, B-boy extraordinaire. And if I recall correctly, you was actually at that Cool Herc party in 1973. We might want to hear a little bit about that and so on. Obviously, there's Kurtis Blow with us as well. And myself, KRS-One, there's Chuck D, who's coming in at some point in this call, but he's here with us as well. And Trixie, B-boy extraordinaire, of course. Maybe we'll see some moves. I can have it, but you know. And this is our panel. And what's so amazing about this particular panel right now is that we might be able to get some clarity and get some answers here as well in terms of hip hop's actual history and making some distinctions between what, you know, people might think of hip hop's history and what its actual history was and actually is. So let me get started by just reminding everyone that, again, this is the Hip Hop Alliance. This is the Black History Month, our Black History Month conference. And so this part of it is about hip hop. It's about hip hop's history. And so we're going to talk about that. I'm sitting here with, I don't know if you can see me on the screen right here, but I'm going to hold this up. This is XXL. And we didn't get to this era yet, but I'm holding up some of these right here. Source. This is like 2003, 2005. And I'm gonna pull out some others as well, some rare magazines as well. The reason I'm starting us off like this is because a lot of hip hop was documented in these magazines. They were documented in these kinds of magazines. And the issue, the big deal with the interesting thing about history is that if you don't know the history of the author of the history you're reading, you really don't know the history that you're actually reading. Now, in universities, people are going to refer to these magazines. Source,
right.
XXL. Here's an old one for you. This is 91. This generation did not get the Source magazine as a magazine and what 5 mics actually meant in the hip hop community at that time. They didn't get XXL and Vibe magazine as well. These, and as well as Billboard magazine, they used to rate albums when they came out. And then of others like Spin magazine and Rolling Stone magazine and so on. This was a major part of hip hop's history, the documentation of its history. However, that documentation was inaccurate. It focused basically on the record sales, rappers and DJs record sales, as opposed to hip hop being any kind of a community, culture, group of specialized individuals. No one was even thinking about these kinds of concepts when these particular magazines were being put out. And you'll notice that most of whoever's on the cover of these magazines were the top selling rappers of the time. So our history being told in this particular way kind of limits us to a commerce-based history as opposed to a cultural-based history. So I start our conversation off because in this way, because we're going to walk through certain errors. And I ask our panelists to be as detailed as possible because we're going to walk through certain errors of time, take about, jump between 10-year errors, 73 to 83, 93, 93, et cetera. and talk about the salient moments that got hip hop started in these time periods. This is very important that we're all on this call together right now. This is history in and of itself. The fact that we are discussing hip hop's history right now at the 50th year with us on this call right now. So let's make the best of it. Let me start off with a two-way conversation. I want to start with Caz, Grandmaster Caz, and only because I keep running into you at 1520 Sedgwick Avenue. You have
that's the birthplace.
You know what it is. You have a tour. Start with that. You've been teaching about 1520 Sedgwick Avenue, brought several million people over there to take a look at it. I mean, I was there several times. You had people there with gold chains on.
No doubt, Kangos and Cazals on it.
Cazals and the whole nine. Let's start there at 1520 with this history of hip hop and your involvement in it at that time.
Well, for us, and when I say us, I'm talking about the pioneer era of hip hop. 1520 represents the birth of hip hop, officially documented. Okay, the party that took place at 1520 kind of cemented, and inspired everybody who, got wind of that party that was affected, whether firsthand or secondhand, because most of us weren't at that party. Our older brothers were, cousins were, or something like that. But that effect just trickled down, and us being the next generation picked up the ball and ran with it. The elements that are contained in the culture of hip hop are elements of expression that have always been around. But for us in that generation, expression was needed more than ever because of the conditions that existed in the Bronx at that time. I mean, the Bronx was bankrupt, corrupt, and every other goddamn rupt you could think of. And so, we reached out to the things that gave us comfort: music, dance, you know what I mean, and spoken word, and of course our art, which is, those are the foundational elements of the culture. And we all exercised, a few of them on different levels. If you find any graffiti artist, he also danced, you know what I mean, or might have DJ'd or rapped. And so we all shared the culture until we, specialized in something in particular. And for me, I lived up the block from Cool Herc. I lived on the next street up from Sedgwick Avenue, which was Phelan Place. So I caught the bug firsthand. You know what I mean? It happened down the block from me. So I tried to emulate it. You know what I mean? I was a little toy DJ at first, you know what I mean? Look, my mother turntable, my mother turntable, and all the records that I could muster up. But that eventually evolved into, how I participated and who I wound up being as far as the culture is concerned. So my story is not unique as far as the early pioneers of hip hop, those that we know of and those that we don't know of. We all participated in the same culture and struggle for recognition. You know what I mean? And the ones that you hear about and know of are the ones that, I guess stuck to the fabric, and kept it moving and created the platform and foundation for what came after.
But real quick for the audience, give us the origin of your name. It also speaks to a lot that was going on in the neighborhood.
My name stems from a group of B-boys that lived on Sedgwick Avenue, and they called themselves the Casanova Crew. And they were unique because all of them name was Casanova something. All right, Casanova this, Casanova that, Casanova this. And I thought that was really cool. I'm in high school, I'm impressionable. I'm like, yo, so all right, I want to be down. I'm going to be Casanova Fly. So just as a B-boy and dancing and going to parties, that was my name. And then when I started DJing, I became DJ Casanova Fly. Once I became a DJ, that was another realm. There was another DJ, popular DJ, Grandmaster Flash, okay, who had a security crew called the Casanovas. And these guys weren't B-boys. All right, they was a gang, ex-Black Spades members who formed a crew, and there would have been conflict had I continued using the Casanova name because of how they was running in the streets and how I might be involved, you know, just through the name. So I was advised to maybe I might want to change that name. So I did shorten it to Caz, just to avoid conflict with the actual Casanovas. So that's how my name came about. The Grandmaster part came from, of course, Grandmaster Flash was the marquee DJ of that era at the time, besides Kool Herc and Bambaataa. But as far as speed and on the turntables, Flash was the fastest. So one night I was DJing in a club and I was cutting a record back and forth, and my man was edging me on like, go faster, go faster. And I was cutting it faster and faster, catching it and catching it. He was like, faster, faster. And I was catching it, catching it, catching it. And the crowd started going, and he started going, Grandmaster, Grandmaster. And then the crowd started going, Grandmaster, Grandmaster. So I figured I earned that title that night, but the title comes from being as fast as Grandmaster Flash. So in essence, yeah, I got the name from Flash, but I was anointed Grandmaster that night and just carried that on into my MC life and career.
You know, this is a great way, maybe not, but it's a great way to segue into Melle Mel. Mel, I mean, your history in hip hop is unparalleled, as they would say. I heard that you was a b-boy first as well. Is there any truth to this? And give us a little bit about your early days. Come from the b-boy days. How did you even get involved in that, and then step from b-boying onto the microphone? Melle Mel.
Well, I'd like to say hello to everybody. Thanks for having me on the call. You know what I mean? Discuss hip hop history and 50th anniversary of hip hop as we know it. And starting out in the beginning, like I said, I started out as a b-boy because in the beginning there was no MCs, being that we was the guys that kind of coined the term and made it up. So either you were a DJ or you was the one other guy that wasn't a DJ, which was Copeland Rock. So he was the one guy that was with Kool Herc that wasn't a DJ, but he did talk on the mic, but he wasn't necessarily an MC because MCing wasn't invented yet. But me starting out as a b-boy, you know, I had good moves. I used to b-boy against you know, the nigga twins. They call themselves the legendary twins now, but I used to b-boy against them, and you know, I thought I was pretty good. I was the best b-boy in the neighborhood. Scorp as well. He was a b-boy, Mr. Ness. But as we changed over to MCing, it got a little bit too athletic. Like this was the era when, you know, right before when Crazy Legs and them came along and they started doing, you know, spinning on their head. And, you know, it used to be a guy we had called Flip Mike, and he was like part gymnast. He knew some b-boy moves, but he was a gymnast. So he used to flip like all the way up the block, and, you know, then we all go down and do our moves. But after a while, it just got, you know, too athletic, number one. And number two, I didn't want to fuck up the crease of my pants. So, you know what I mean? We had to do something different. You know what I mean? We started listening to, you know, basically what Herc was doing. And Cowboy, he was already like the crowd response guy, you know, in our little set. And me and my brother Kid Creole, we would practice our routines or whatever. And right from b-boying, we went, you know, we just transitioned into MCing. And, you know, it was a pretty seamless transition. I mean, I always had the gift of gab, and, you know, just, you know, and just had something to keep the party going. So it was, you know, like I said, it was a good transition. But I think the b-boy era, and even I think even up to right now, that was the purest form of what hip hop was. It was the music, it was the dance, and it never, you know, that's the one thing, like even throughout all the generations of hip hop and up till now, b-boying kept most of the same exact dynamics as it did back then. I mean, graffiti as well, but we talking, the art form of graffiti. But I'm talking as far as even in the time of b-boying, from then up to now, the basic dynamics of it don't change. They still do the b-boy stands now the way they did it back then. The music, the break beats. They utilize all the same thing. The Kangos, the Pumas. Is just the dynamics never changed, which is a great thing, because that part of it the culture sustained itself. When discussing rap, at some point it really stopped being hip hop, even though you could say it is what it is, but at some point it stopped being hip hop because it got away from the culture. But b-boying kept the same dynamics from the original, from how it was originally done.
Mel, from 73 to 83, just looking at those 10 years, 73 to 83, and I'm thinking in 83, I'm thinking Run DMC in 83. So from 73, from Hurt all the way to Run DMC, what do you think was the most prominent element over those 10 years? Was it b-boying? Was it graffiti writing, MCing, DJing? I don't think beatbox. Well, no, Dougie Fresh was around, but let me include him as an MC. Let me leave out beatboxing right now. But just the core 4 elements: breaking, MCing, graffiti writing, DJing. Which one would you say? And Caz, I'm gonna ask you the same question. Which one would you say was the most prominent in those 10 years?
Well, obviously in the beginning it was DJing, because that was the cornerstone. Without the music, you needed a band. You needed the marching band in order for the whole thing to move forward. But as time went by, and especially when you get out of the street era and Herc's era, it started getting more of a rap thing that became more prominent, because it became more of a showpiece. DJing it was good. It was only good to look at after Flash, changed the dynamics of what DJing was. It was more like a listening kind of thing. So if you came in the party back in the day, the DJ was ground level. It had a rope around the DJ, and not too many people could stand in front and watch the DJ. Most of the people was behind the ropes, and they was more or less listening to what was going on. But until Flash changed the dynamics, then it gave people something to actually look at as well as listen to. But then at the same time, that when MCing evolved and how we evolved MCing, we tried to put a showpiece on it, to whereas we elevated ourselves above the crowd. So now the crowd is not looking into the ropes or in the back of somebody's head or looking at the DJ. They're looking up, and it's MCs, and they were on stage, or we're on whatever we can make out of a stage. And now it's a performance. So then that changed the whole dynamics of what was important in the actual dynamics of hip hop. So I would think in the beginning it had to be the DJ, but after a while, and especially when it got to the record era, a lot of the first guys that made records, they used a band. And then, and most of the guys that had DJs, they either cut their DJ off, or or his status fell. It was like if it was DJ Breakout and the Funky 4 plus one more, after they made a record, it was the Funky 4 plus one more. And actually, and I'm saying this in all honesty, the one mistake that I think that we actually made in our career, that if I could take back, I would take back. The one mistake that we made was, out of respect for Flash, we kept his name out front, and that gave him the ability to run with the whole brand and of the group, Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five. So had we have done Furious Five featuring Grandmaster Flash, the whole dynamics of the group and the legacy of the group, it would have been totally different. But out of respect, we kept it, we kept it real and original. You know what I mean? Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five, was unconceivable. Like, well, why would we put Flash's name behind our name? And I think it was the right thing to do then, but as a career move, it was the wrong thing to do. So because the original point is at some point, MCing got just as prominent as DJs, and what we tried to do to keep the same chemistry of what was going on back in the day, we kept Flash's name out front, which as far as with the legacy of the group, it was the wrong thing to do. But everything turned out how it turned out, and that's the one regret.
We got MC Sha Rock, I think, just joined us as well. But Caz, I'd like to hit you with the same question. Yes. Sister, what is happening?
You, sir.
Thanks for joining us.
No doubt.
We're kind of in the middle. I just hit Mel with a question about what was the most prominent element just out of the core four: breaking, MCing, graffiti writing, DJing. What does he think was the most prominent element between 1973 and 1983? Melle Mel just said for him, it's DJing, which started off, and then MCing became prominent. The DJ got kind of pushed to the back. The Furious Five was one of the few, I guess, MC crews that would put their DJ's name in front now. I'm going to come back to you on that for you to think about that 73 to 83. But I want to jump over to Caz. Caz, 73 to 83, what do you think was the most prominent element of hip hop during that time?
All right, yeah. For me, hip hop was more chronological. In 1973, I was 13. So a few things happened before that, which led up to it. Graffiti for me was the first thing that was prominent as far as my awareness of what would become hip hop, because I saw it on the trains going back and forth to school as a kid. As I got older, junior high school, that's what I was enamored by first, standing underneath those subway cars and watching to see if Scene got a new whole car, or see if any of the legendary graffiti artists, Blade or Bic or any of them cats was throwing up. And on a junior high school, it was on the walls and everything. So for me, it was that first. And then the music. Once I got exposed to parties, be it a block party or a house party, the music became the main theme, and the DJ, the person playing the music, became the focal point. Okay. Next, the B-boys, because the DJ created the environment and the music to create the dance. And people used to come to party just to see B-boys dance. Okay. They was the marquee thing at parties at a particular point. So I think they were the third time or the third element that held prominence, and then the MC. Like Mel said, once the MC stood in front of the DJ and took to the stage, like he said, they were the first group to lift themselves above everybody and look like and act, as opposed to some niggas on the mic. And you couldn't tell who was who if you was three rows behind in the crowd. So yeah, I think for me, and as far as my awareness of each of the elements and each one I gravitated toward, that was pretty much it for me.
Real quick, a side question, and Mel, I'm gonna hit you with this as I come over to Sha Rock. When did you and Melle Mel meet?
I don't remember the first occurrence, the first day or first time, but probably like 77, 78.
Well, not necessarily met, but like, see, back in the day, it was a unwritten rule. We didn't really fraternize with each other. Like I didn't really speak to Caz or anybody till we started going to the FIBA. There was no, but we knew who he was, because he was a good DJ, he had a good group, and even with Breakout and Sha Rock and Rodney and them, but we knew each other. But I mean, we never disrespected each other, but we just never, yeah, Caz, this is Mel, this is like I had got to talking one time with JDL when we was in the Fever, and we couldn't, like, I couldn't tell the rest of the Furious Five that I thought that JDL was all right. Like we talk, and then we'd go hang out like on the street somewhere or in the building and smoke or something. But we couldn't, because it was that was the written rule. Everybody just had their own little thing going on. And then by the time it got to the Fever, then we actually intermingled with each other, because it was a different time then.
Yeah, we was high then. That's what it was. That was different. That's what was different. No, but just to expound on what Mel was saying, yeah, I was saying our awareness of each other, was around 78, 79. You start seeing flyers, you know what I mean, and hearing about other people that, that was involved in the culture. And of course, you went to see people who did what you did. And like I said, they were one of the first marquee groups when I was still struggling, Casanova Fly, DJ getting a speaker from here and an amp from here. You know what I mean? These guys were established. So I was always on the catch up. You know what I mean? By the time I got to the Cold Crush, we talking 80, 81. That's when we really put an imprint on hip hop and kind of made it to the major leagues, so to speak. But prior to that, like I said, it was a struggle for recognition.
MC Sha Rock, same question. From 1973 to 1983, what was the most prominent in your neighborhood, in your area, even in your own mind? What was the most prominent element out of breaking, MCing, graffiti writing, DJing? What did you see as the most prominent element during that time?
Well, first of all, let me say thank you to Kurtis Blow for reaching out to me. I'm frying chicken right now, but and I have another Zoom meeting, but I'm going to answer your question. For everybody that's on this panel, I respect so much. So when you talk about what was the most important element, just as Caz said, chronologically, all of them were important. The DJ is the one that set it off. For me, 1976, I became a nomadic B-girl. So in order for me to be able to travel around the Bronx and hear those break beats, and be able to break dance to, the DJ was the one who was playing those songs and playing those beats that were synonymous within, the culture, and leading it forward. So the DJ at that time, that I came into the game, for me in 1976, was the most important element part of hip hop culture. So let's go into 1977. At the end of 1977, Mel, his brother Creole, Cowboy, they were already out, and I guess like in the middle of 1977, and I came at the end of 1977. And by 1978, Caz and all of them know I talk about this all the time. 1978 was the most important year of MCs, because when that time came, you may have people like even Coke Rock, or let's say DJ Hollywood, that would rap in a certain type of baritone. When the Furious 3 and the Furious 4 and the Funky 4 came on scene, we brought in a new essence and a new cadence style of the way that rhyming was portrayed. And even for the people that are rhyming now, we brought in the cadence, we brought in the routines, we brought in the back and forth, we brought in the harmonizing and the singing and everything. So that year, 1978 was the most important year of the MCs, because all other MCs that was coming up in the game was trying to emulate what was going on. So the B-girl and the B-boy and the DJ, it's no way that you can separate and say which one is more important than the next, because all of them solidifies the authenticity, the authenticity of hip hop culture. You understand what I'm saying? You cannot separate one without the other, and you cannot call hip hop if you're not celebrating all of them and saying that every last single one of those elements is more important than the next, because that is what solidifies what hip hop culture is. So every element, when I came into the game, was important, but most of all, the ones that I celebrated the most was the B-girl, the DJ, and the MC, and later graffiti.
Well, the Trixie and Wallace D are the first two the first big battles. Now, you know, I came from Harlem. I used to dance with you, Kurt. We would dance in Harlem over Chuck Center and all around through Harlem. I had a girlfriend in the Bronx. I go up to the Bronx up on University Avenue on Burnside, and Kurt and Coke hang out up there. So I met them up there. That's what told me about coming out to the party. So going to the first parties, it was, when I first got there, I was the foreign guy because Trixie was already established as Herc's guy. They went to high school together. I'm gonna talk for you, Trixie. They went to high school together.
There you go.
Okay, there he goes. There he goes. No, go ahead, brother.
All right, listen. The first party was with me and my cousin, Wallace D. That's when it first started for me. Wallace D. I didn't even know he was my cousin. He come from Bronx River. Herc is his party. This dude named Wallace D. I'm like, who's this dude? He in my neighborhood. I'm born and raised in the Bronx. So me, Coco, The Rock, we all hung out together, okay? All of a sudden, he wants to give a party. So I waxed Wallace D. And then a couple of years later, 73, I meet this little midget named Dancing Doug. And Dancing Doug and me, for some reason, man, we just was at each other. I mean, this dude came out of nowhere, you know, but for me, it was like, Coco Rock gave me my name, Trixie, way before that, because, wow, that name just was a household name. And then, tell the truth, it was more like the DJ and breakdancer for me. It wasn't really no MCing like that. Coke was MC, but it was more of the DJ for me because I love music, you know. And I met a great friend named Dancing Doug, and I had to put it on him too. You know what I'm saying? And we didn't hang out or nothing, but he was nice. I mean, he would break friends, and me and Wallace had to battle them too. But all in all, for me, it was a lot of fun. I didn't know that breakdancing would be as big as it is today, and I owe it to Wallace, the twins, Dancing Doug, one A-boy Sasa. I mean, there's a lot of brothers, Powwow, all you guys who started breaking and then going to rapping and everything. I commend all of you guys, you know, because without you guys, it wouldn't be no Trixie, you know. And wow, I am glad that I'm alive at this age, at 66 years old, to see my craft go as far as the limits, you know. So yeah, it was different then, man. It was fun. It was get dressed up. Oh man, did we have a lot of fun doing it. And we didn't have a crew. We didn't have no crews. We didn't have none of that. It was 101. You know, I mean, we danced a whole album. Herc would throw something on there and we had to dance the whole album. And that's real talk, you know. So yeah, I love you guys and thank you. Thank you for keeping it alive, keeping the music alive, keeping your voices strong. KRS-One, I mean, Mel, all you guys. I mean, without you guys, none of this would happen. You know, I'm just glad to be a part of it.
Can I correct the record down?
You can cut it in there now, my good brother.
Can I correct the record down? but going back to 73, you look at back then, it was, you figure you also had all these great DJs all around too. So you had Smokatrons, even a lot of Smokey's dancers. A lot of people don't give them the credit. You know, Bobo comes from over there. James Bond comes over there. Sister Boo, Mother Earth. The Smokatrons came to Herc's party. So I always said that you have all the elements of hip hop at one point coming together, and there was like nitrogen and glycerin. and there was an explosion. And that's where it all jumped off at, you know. But I always said to myself, though, and Trixie probably, and Kurt too, because Kurt being a B-boy before, like I was an MC for a minute, MC Freaky D, didn't last long. I was a DJ for a while, DJ, that didn't work for a while. I used to be Priest 155 graffiti, that passed. But the B-boy thing was my thing, you know, being, you know, coming from Harlem, dancing through Harlem, and then having to go into high school in the Bronx, having a girlfriend in the Bronx. The Bronx became my spot. But going there with Trixie Wallace, Sasa, you know, the Amazing Bobo, you know, the twins, you know, Rossi, the B girls, Ducey, Kimmy, you know, Noonie, Darlene, Aileen, Gracie's, you know, Sandra, Janet Rock, all these B girls. We all these great B girls too.
Mhm.
So a lot of people didn't focus on that too. That's why when we had the Hall of Fame, we made sure we recognize all the women that was part from day one too, because people didn't give them the kind of significance they supposed to have being there from day one. So it was so critical for us to say we're gonna take this next level, saying not only was it the B-boys who a lot, just like Mel said, a lot of B-boys that became graffiti artists, then became DJs and MCs. That was the progression of things. Like Sha Rock, same thing. Being the B girl, you progress to the next thing, to the next level, to become an MC or a DJ. But the evolution came from that music, because had Herc not played that kind of music at that time with that merry-go-round and made that beat go, because everybody came to Herc's parties. That's why Herc's 1520 is the circle, because everybody had to come to Herc's to cut their teeth. Charlie Rock will tell you, you know, from the Zulu Nation guys, they had to come there to get their reputation. Everybody had to come there. You couldn't cut your teeth there, you couldn't make it. So everybody came. So that's that synergy of that beginning, that egg that was there. And just from the egg, that thought, Herc always told me, he said, the yolk of the egg is where I get my music from. That one little piece of that music. I find this crazy song, but it has that funky beat, a little beat, but by extending that beat, that's how the breakdancing started. It's no rocket science. All you did was do one. We danced, like Trixie said, we danced the whole record. That beat came on, you start doing your thing. But we extended that beat, extended the beat. Now you got to think of something new to do. And every week we do something new, because everybody came to see the B-boys, the B-girls every week. And that's why I always say that's why hip hop really blew up, because everybody came there to see that. Herc was playing the crazy music, Coke's on the mic with the echo chamber, and the B-boys and B-girls tearing up the big circles. We had little circles over here, over there and there, but the big circles, you know, me and at it, you know. But also you go to Chuck Center. The twins would go to Chuck Center and practice their moves to come back to Herc's, you know, and Clark Kent. They will go over there. So you had the Harlem influence too. A lot of people didn't focus on that too, but you had Chuck Center was a spot. And Kurt could tell you that was the spot. We go to Harlem and dance through there, they come back to Herc's. But you always had to cut your teeth at Herc's parties. That was it. And then obviously graffiti being the first thing that everyone saw graffiti before anything started. It was graffiti. That was just it. You know, Taki 183, State High 149, you know, Lee, all these great graffiti artists in the beginning. And even everybody did graffiti. Kirk was a graffiti artist too. Everybody did graffiti. It was just one of the things we all did. But the B-boy became significant at that point, and that's laid the basis next for people to progress to becoming MCs and DJs. And then the end of the 70s into the 80s, it became rap, became it. That was it. You know, the B-boys went this way. They're coming back now, because now we're going to the Olympics. It's going to be a lot more emphasis on the B-boys again and B-girls now, because it's going to the Olympics. But thinking from 78 on, it was the rappers. That was it.
And Dancing Doug, to coincide with what you said, I read somewhere where someone said that graffiti, you know, wasn't a part of hip hop. But what if they didn't really check that? Graffiti played a very important role in hip hop, because a lot of the flyer makers like Buddy Esquire, you know, and Raleigh, you know, and many other people were graffiti artists before they transfer over to making flyers, you know. So that's the you know, that's what entwined. Well, one of the things why I always say that graffiti is a major part, because once again, you know, you had those flyer makers that were graffiti artists first before they turned to making flyers, like the Buddy Esquires and the Raleighs and all of them, you know.
You know, when we first started B-boying and B-girling, it was a competition between the guys and the girls. That was the main focal point of the party. And, you know, if you went out, we called it burning, you know, or going off or rocking, you know. So you remember, you know, girls like Eileen and, Trixie's sister was incredible back in the days. And so the girls had the reputation that, you know, they were nice too. And so we as the guys, we had to compete. And then it transitioned as we got older. Now you couldn't talk to a girl if you burnt her, or if she burnt you, she wouldn't give you her number. So as we got older, 15, 16, 17, 18, we wanted to talk to these pretty girls, and we couldn't because they were burning us and we were burning them. So eventually it stopped. It went to the competition between just the guys. Who's the greatest dancer? Just like Saturday Night Fever and John Travolta in the middle of a circle doing his thing. And then somebody comes in that circle and they have a competition. That same kind of thing, they call it a cipher. It's still a cipher today. And so, you know, in the middle of that circle went up in the Bronx, in Harlem, places like the Executive Playhouse and the Hevelo. And it was incredible to see these circles, man. I remember seeing Doug. I remember seeing him, man. He was incredible. I used to like just stare and watch him, man, and study his moves, like, and he had all kinds of moves. I remember one time doing this, he was in the circle, and during that time, you know, the fashion was the thing, you know, we all had on Pumas or whatever, you know, tango caps or whatever. But Doug had a sombrero, a big sombrero hat, right? And I remember that because I know I was in a gang called the Peacemakers up on 178th Street and Southern Boulevard. And there was one guy, his name was Lyte. Lyte used to wear a sombrero all the time. And Mel will tell you, that's where I met Mel in 1975, right? And so this sombrero, Doug took the sombrero off and threw it on the floor and started dancing around the sombrero, right? Doing a Mexican dance to what song? The Mexican. And that was like the most amazing thing for me. But it's stuff like that went on in the Executive Playhouse, you know? I used to go there every Friday night. Saturdays, I went downtown to Nell Gwynn's and Nemo's, places like that. But that was my life for about 2 or 3 years between 1976 and 78. Man, I was going out to the clubs every night, you know, and it was amazing. But getting back to the Chuck Center, now the Chuck Center was one of those b-boy places that it was a competition type thing. It was created by a guy who had a football team. I don't know if you guys remember the UBA Football League. It was like the PAL during that time. They had all these community organizations trying out of the civil rights movement, you know, with Each One, Teach One and the PAL. They had all these tournaments. We used to run track. We used to play basketball. We used to play baseball and swim. I got a lot of swimming trophies and all that. And so Chuck's Center was made by this guy named Chuck. He was the coach of one of the football teams that we used to play against. And he was over on the east side, over in Johnson Projects, right there, 114th Street and 2nd Avenue. And so he had this community center that he opened up for the kids to come, the football teams to come and party and have a good time and, pass the time away and listen to music. And we don't have to fight and all that. We were playing football. Yes, we were competing in sports, but here we come to this community center and we started competing in dance. And so my crew over on the west side of Harlem, the Hill Boys, they came and got me. I was a young little Kurt and doing a lot of flips and acrobatics and all this stuff and had crazy footwork. And they asked me to join the team. And we went down to the east side to battle at Chuck Center. And I did very well. And they put me down with the troop. And so I became a B-boy, part of the Hill Boys B-boy team. And we just rock Harlem and the South Bronx. And I remember meeting Kool Herc in 1974 and with my man, Larry Green, who went to Music and Arts High School. And he introduced me. He lived on the 169th Street and Washington Avenue. And so Larry took me up to the Bronx and introduced me to Kool Herc. But that's incredible. I became his big fan after that. I went to all of his parties, even he partied on the west side of the Bronx and Kennedy Center and places like that. Even when he went down to Hunter College and played against Pete DJ Jones one night, that was a great gig that night. Man, incredible. And Herc rocked the house. He had the earthquake sound system, the Hercule Lord, and it was incredible just to be a part of that whole thing. And I remember him, Coke LaRock, DJ Clark Kent, the legendary Smith twins. They had a whole crew, man. It was incredible to be a part of that era and see it go down. But yeah, a lot of that music that was played at Chunk Center, I later on heard in the Executive Playhouse. And I was like, oh my God, he's playing the music I love, that B-boy music, James Brown, Give It Up, Turn It Loose, Listen to Me by Baby Huey, and Come On and Follow Me by the Isley Brothers. And come on, 10 James Brown songs in a row, you know what I mean? But the one thing I remember about Kool Herc, he was a great DJ. He played soul music in the world of disco. Everybody else was playing YMCA, Donna Summer and Patrick Jovet and all this. We got our own thing. We got it. You remember that? All them songs were disco songs, but Herc play soul music. You would go up to the Hevelo and hear, the Jackson 5, I Want You Back, with right after it, ABC and Just a Misdemeanor, Oh man, all them songs, the soul songs that we love. I can understand it. Whoa, whoa, whoa.
That's my song.
You know
Hey,
what I mean?
tell him, Kurt, what was the Jackson 5 B-boy song?
Oh, you know it.
Hum along and dance.
Hum along
and dance.
Hum along and dance. The Jackson 5. Well, they got another one, Dancing Machine. Dance Machine was pretty hot too. But Hum Along and Dance was a B-boy song that only Kool Herc played. And you can go up to the exec to hear that song every Friday night. He was there. And another thing about Kool Herc, and I'll prove that I was there, is because in the middle of the night, y'all, 3 o'clock in the morning, Herc would come on a mic and say, all right, it's time for y'all to make a decision. We're gonna close the doors and we ain't opening up until 6 o'clock in the morning. So if you gotta go home now because it's about to go down. And they shut the doors. And the first song he played was Give It Up or Turn It Loose. And it went crazy, right? So that was it. You had to make a decision at 3 a.m. in the morning or you would have to leave. And I remember getting my butt beat many a nights, coming home at 7 o'clock in the morning. It was daylight, people going to work. I'm 16 years old, coming in at 7 in the morning. Man, my mom had the belt ready. I got toe up. Yes. But it was worth it because I love that music. And the one thing about it is the music was the most important thing. That was our escapism. Another thing I want to say is cultural trauma is how hip hop got started. We're coming out of the 60s and the civil rights movement and all of our heroes being killed, trying to give us equality and justice. People like Martin Luther King in 1968, Malcolm X in 1965. You know, it was like, my God, all this trauma, when you experience all this trauma, it's affecting your mental health. So you have to find a way to deal with it. And music became our escapism. Like I remember somebody just said the Bronx was burning, Bronx was broke and all that. You know, you had the landlords up there in the early 70s burning the buildings down on purpose so they can get to the insurance money. And it became a scam all over the city. But there was one community organizer that said, you know, the buildings are burning down on one side of the street, but the kids on the other side are putting it all together. And that's the story of hip hop. We had our music. Of course, we had the DJ. God bless the DJ for playing that music that we love, the music that I'll play still to this day.
Jones, Archbishop Jones.
And so, you know, it's so important, the music, the DJ, the B-boys, and then the rap. And I heard Caz say, you know, hip hop is something like 4 legs of a table. You need those 4 legs in order for the table to stay standing, right? But I look at it like this. Hip hop is the mother of 4 babies, right? Now you have one of the children, they make it famous. The rapper goes double platinum, triple platinum. He's a big super duper star. So does he forget about the rest of his family, his brothers? Or does he help them also achieve success? Does he support them in their endeavors? And this is how I'm looking at hip hop of today. You know, the rapper is everything right now. It's the focal point of hip hop. So don't forget about your people. Don't forget about the B-boys. Don't forget about the DJs. And don't forget about the graph artists. Don't forget about everything, all of the culture. Keep it real. Keep it going. Keep it flowing and keep it growing. That's my take on it. Thank you, y'all.
I mean, we could trace this shit back to a whole lot of other things, but if we're just kind of confining the conversation to the hip hop generation, our influences is pretty right behind us. Our parents. I mean, the music that we heard growing up. I mean, I doubt if you are probably a little older than me, and I'm one of the oldest people on the panel. I'm 63. I'll be 63 this year. Okay, so I'm not too far behind you. So my influences are pretty much your influences, except I wasn't where you were. And that's the same for a lot of people who document the culture or live the culture in one place or another. They don't have the same influences. I remember Reese Beach and Plummer and Maboya and hearing about that from my oldest sister, who used to play out in Queens and all that. So it's not like we invented DJing, we started DJing, but this style, this way that we perfected it is where we document it from. And, you know, us as teachers, educators, historians, it's important that we add that fact of the origins of all of these elements. But we have to define our conversation to you know, the question at hand and the era at hand and where we're talking about, because we don't have definitive status from 73 on the facts from 73. You know what I mean? There's a lot of things have been blurred and conversations coming from here and there. So if we start going back to the 50s and 60s and all that other shit, the lines are going to get blurred even further. All right. So that's all I'm saying.
You actually summed up. That was a nice chronology. That was a nice chronology right there. You know, I dropped off for a minute. I don't know if we really went over. I know we probably still in the first 10 years. But while you're there, Dancing Doug, can you give us a description of what that first Herc party was like?
Well, you know, everybody in Herc's parties was sitting there. It was just fun. See, that's the thing about it. Hip hop starts with fun. It wasn't about nobody making no money. No, there's nobody talking about anybody who says they knew back then that this would be as big as it is now. They lying. Nobody knew that. Going to a party. That's all it was. Going to 15, 20 second party to the rec room was a party. Going to the park was a party. Going to the Twilight Zone, it was going to a party. To the Hebelo, a party. Executive Playhouse, a party. The Parkside Plaza, a party. That's all it was. We was partying. We was a bunch of young kids dancing, having fun. That's all it was. It was just competition, having fun, dancing against each other. That's all it was. It was crowded.
Yeah,
I'm sorry?
Yeah, I was going to say, you know,
No, continue.
Me and Doug met each other in 72, 73. When the first party started for me, it was in the little rec room and it wasn't much to do. So when I jumped over Wallace's head, it wasn't that much room, but it was so much fun because nobody, like, it was just a kid thing. It was something that, hey, this is what we do. Like, we play basketball, football, and all that. So what I did on the next go round, I did in the rec room, I had to make space to do a roll on the floor. You know, so when we got in the Twilight Zone in the Hebelo, man, that was like I was in the park because I had a lot of space to do what I wanted to do. The party was, the music, the sound went right through me. And anybody that got on that dance floor, the music went right through them. That's how loud and crisp the sound was. And when me and Doug got into it, it just took us to another dimension, you know? So yeah, Herc really, he learned a lot hanging out with us. Because see, Herc hung out with us and went to our parties. Because Herc was a graffiti writer first before he became a DJ. Him, Earl Marco, Phase 2, all these dudes already, they were graffitis. Because they don't talk about Earl Marco. Earl Marco was a DJ too. So, and Earl Marco come from the West Side too. You know, so we met Herc when they got burnt out on the East Side, came to the West Side, and they lived in the projects. Then Herc started messing around with us, and then came history. We all was a crew. You know, we all hung out together. We smoked more weed than the Lord allowed. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, we had a lot of fun because I first wasn't gonna go to the party because it's so cold down there. Cedric, in the wintertime, boy, you yo, it was just something to do. We were kids, no fighting, nobody got hurt, nobody got robbed. You know, even though we had the gangs, it wasn't really no gangs on the West Side. Most of the gangs was on the East Side, and a lot of cats from the West Side didn't hang out on the East Side. I hung out on the East Side and the West Side. I had both worlds because I grew up on both sides. You know, so the history is beautiful that we have, and all we got to do is just keep it going. You know, and that's why it's good to document what we have, because they show pictures of Sammy Davis Jr., the Nicholson brothers, all of them, they're on documentary. They got films of all these guys. Even the girls, I mean, they was getting down too, you know? So, yeah, our history is, we got to keep it alive. That's all. Love you guys.
Yep, yep. Love you too, Trixie. Thank you. Thank you. Guys, I just want to say, you know, I'm claiming the Bronx. I lived there many years, met my wife there. We've been married for 38 years. She's from Co-op City. I moved to the Bronx when I was 18, when I got a record deal. The first apartment I got, we named it the Bat Cave up on University Ave, University and Strong Avenue. And I'll never forget it. That was the best time of my life. As you can see, I got on the Bronx hat. We get these hats are all in lids. I'm representing. I love the Bronx. And, you know, you have my faith and my belief that hip hop, if there was any borough in New York City, the Bronx should have that marquee of being the birthplace of hip hop. Yes, I'll give it to you because I know I've seen it. I've seen the hurt parties. I've been to, you know, the fever. And, you know, most of hip hop, I remember when the fever was so hot, man, everybody in New York, that was a #1 club in New York. Every MC from New York had to come to the fever if you wanted to be recognized. If you wanted to be accepted in the hip hop field, you had to come to the fever. And that was 167th Street and Jerome Avenue. And I remember being there many, many, many nights. So I love you, Bronx. As a matter of fact, the owner of the Disco Fever, Sal, was the best man at my wedding. And so my heart is for you guys. My heart will always be for the Bronx. I love you. And that's all I gotta say. You know, as a matter of fact, I live in LA. Yes, that is true, but I am bi-coastal. I live in the Bronx and I live in LA. So I'm bi-coastal. And I'll always claim the Bronx. That's like my home. Thank you.
The Bronx is the Mecca. They had
The
more
Bronx
hip-hop
claiming you
venues.
too.
Exactly.
Okay.
The Bronx
Yeah,
had more
Bronx
hip hop
is home.
venues than any borough in New York City from day one.
All right,
That's right, Sha Rock.
I'm just saying.
Chris,
Yes.
weigh in, bro. It's like almost 9.
And it's almost time. And
Facts.
this is a wonderful conversation. I hope, I mean, look, so much has been said, and I'm just sitting here writing. There's so much has been said here. I don't even know like where to go back. Like for instance, so Sha Rock was talking about we got to stop saying that the Bronx is burning. Now, I thought that was dope on another level because it changes the game.
Stand on that shit.
In that sense. But I will say, though, as a side note, that like Kurtis Blow, I'm one of the people who push that narrative.
I know. I see you. I see you out there.
I push it as well. You know why? Because where I grew up in, it was a part of the Bronx I grew up.
I grew up in that
burning
area
like
too.
a motherfucker.
I grew up in that area too.
I was just about to say, the part of the Bronx I grew up in.
All right.
I lived in those burning sections as well, but I lived all over the Bronx too.
Me
Right.
too.
Righteous. No, Sha Rock, you are so real and right. Because as far as scholarship is concerned, that detail is so important. No, the whole Bronx was not burning.
Yes, sir.
Let's establish that. I mean,
I
that's
didn't say that either. I
No,
never
no, no.
said that.
No, it's not on you, Kurt. Kurt, you must know that
Okay.
it's not on you. It's
a
just
gun-
that that's the narrative. You was trying to make a point, Kurt, and I get that.
They've been
But this
saying that for years.
this not on you. It's just the media in general has been saying this for years. People are writing books about this for years. And like I said, you know, us in the Bronx, you know, if you was that enthusiast and you've been around, Trixie, you was a B-boy, you know, Doug, you was a B-boy. And when you travel, you saw that these areas was not burning. They were not burning
all
over
of
there
them.
on the west side.
No.
We just need to change
No.
that story. It has nothing to do
Yeah.
with you, Kurt, because you didn't put that out there.
No. There
No.
were buildings. I said that it was a scam that spread around the
Yeah,
whole city.
yeah,
And
it did.
they had buildings burning down in Harlem.
Oh, no question.
No question. Yeah.
All
Yeah,
right.
they-
But the
became a-
narrative, right.
Right.
The narrative that these media and people and professors and educators and everybody write about, the story sound good. The Bronx was burning. But if we all are representing the Bronx to the fullest, the home of the hip hop, we need to correct that story and say that the Bronx was thriving in all areas. Yes, landlords was doing that shit, right?
Oh,
And
yeah,
they was doing this shit in other places. They were doing some wicked shit.
Right. It might have been about 10 slumlords in the whole city
Right.
that were doing that.
Right.
In
Yeah.
the poorest sections of the city.
Right.
Yeah, because they
That's
only did
important
sections.
that you point that out as well.
Right.
Because
Right.
like you said, Sha, there were people that were living middle class families that had houses and
The west
garages.
side.
At
Yeah.
some point in my life, I lived uptown by Edenwall, and we
Absolutely.
lived in a house. I had a front yard and a backyard, and there was a stark contrast from me growing up on Union Avenue.
The projects,
You know what I
Eden
mean?
Wall,
Or living
they
on
weren't
Fail
burning.
Street. You know what I'm
Uptown
saying?
Bronx, one of the
Yeah,
largest
shoot, I
housing
live-
areas in New York City, Eden Wall projects. They weren't burning. So we
No,
just
only
need to correct it.
certain parts of the Bronx, in the like you said, the pause, almost like the pause part of the Bronx, near Fox Street, Beck Street, all them kind of
Right,
areas.
certain areas,
They
right,
start-
Right.
They started burn Third Avenue,
right.
all that, you know, and they in Intervale, all of those, you know, you seen all at nighttime. You wouldn't want to walk through there and all that. That's
Mm-hmm.
just part of the South Bronx, not the whole part of South Bronx. So they
Absolutely.
use that. They use that as the Bronx is burning down. They've been doing that for years. We know that the Bronx wasn't burning down, only certain parts of it. And you're right, Sha Rock. We need to stop saying that because it wasn't true.
Right.
You went anywhere. They were building part of the Bronx up anyway, you know? And there were fires all over the New York City. So Brooklyn, Queens, Staten Island, you know, they were all burning. So they just used that part of the Bronx to scare people. Don't come to the Bronx and all that old crap. Nah.
The entire Bronx built
No.
$1 billion business, and that's what we need to stand on.
$1 billion, shit, $1
That's
trillion
what we need to
business,
stand
you
on.
look at it. You know?
That's why I love you. That's why I love you, Sha. That's why I love you. I gotta say that. You break that shit down. I love that about you, darling. I love it.
Thank you. I appreciate you. And I
It's my
appreciate all of
girl.
you. I appreciate all of you.
No, absolutely. I think the shining statement out of this particular segment we've had right here is exactly what you've said, Sha Rock, in the sense of, you know, this idea of tearing down the Bronx in our own narratives. I mean, even though that is what went on, you know, there's a whole lot of other things that went on too, but we don't define the Bronx by these other tragedies that happened as well. You know, and in defense of the story itself, you know, right, people like myself, I did live in the South Bronx when the buildings were burning.
Me too.
We did experience that. And then, of course, it's documented what the insurance money was about and all of that type of stuff. Yes, that is there. Yes, it is. Like, let me also add that Harlem had a huge heroin problem.
Yes, and I lived in Harlem too and seen it. 147th, 7th and 8th Avenue.
You
Yes.
Oh, you
when I landed from
On
Wilmington,
16th
North
Street.
Carolina, when I landed from Wilmington, North Carolina, my first stop was 110th Street and 7th Avenue. And then I moved to the Bronx, 167th and Webster. Then I moved back to Harlem, 147th between 7th and 8th.
Wilmington.
Then moved back to the
Yo,
Bronx. So I
Sha Rock,
seen it
that's
all.
where my mother's from. My
Yeah.
mother's from Wilmington, North
200 block.
Carolina.
You the
Word.
200 block.
Wow.
7th, 8th Ave. That's 200 block.
147 between
Yeah.
7th and 8th.
Yeah,
That's a 200
that's
block.
the spot.
Building
Yo,
250. Building 250.
I know the
That's what I'm
building.
saying. It's a 2.
That's right.
They had a
No,
crazy
no,
bar
no,
right
no,
there,
no,
a crazy bar on 147th Street and 8th Avenue
Yeah.
called
Yes.
the Corner
Yeah.
Pocket.
I couldn't go to it
Yeah.
because I was young, but my mom and stepfather did.
Yep, the Corner
That's
Pocket.
hang out on
Yes.
145th.
Oh yeah.
You see,
Wow.
but even though the Harlem had those issues, we would not define the whole of Harlem
There you
based
go.
on that heroin. Harlem had the heroin crazy.
There
Okay,
you go.
I think out of
From
all
116th Street down.
straight, straight up, you know.
Straight up,
So
for real.
this is something to let's take this as a takeaway. We got to continue this conversation. Maybe we want to do a part 2. Elder Kurtis, you may want to weigh in on that, but you know, we pretty much covered a lot of hip hop's origin points, and so on. If there's not much more to discuss at this particular point, we could sort of begin to bring this to an actual close. And when I say bring it to a close, I would just end off, you know, with, of course, the advice and the solutions. So here we are. I would say everyone on this call right here, right now, can be considered an architect of hip hop's actual culture. I mean, our very lives added to what people are interpreting as the culture itself. You know, Caz, you make this distinction all the time about, of course, yes, there are many elements to hip hop stemming back, you know, I mean, we say 50s, 40s, 30s, but you can go all the way back. And in terms of geographical location, hip hop's elements come from all over the place as well. It all met in the Bronx. It seemed like Kool Herc's set. His set was the magnet. The Bronx was the environment. And this is what got the culture started. I want to end off with informing our audience to the future of hip hop. Talk a little bit about hip hop's potentials now as we come to a close. Let's give ourselves 2 minutes each to talk about the potential of this movement. I'll start off by saying this, that what I find funny about hip, not even funny, what I find magnificent about hip hop is that, and I'll say this while you guys are online here, is that people like yourselves, Sha Rock, Melle Mel, Grandmaster Caz, Trixie, Dancing Doug, you guys, Kurtis Blow, you guys, believe it or not, what you did as children, we were part of a citywide movement, or even if you say the Bronx, a borough-wide movement. But look at this, the way in which we naturally were. Like, you know, like you said, nobody knew we were creating hip hop. Nobody knew we were gonna get money off this, but we had an attitude about ourselves. And all Black people and Latino people did not have this attitude. This was a certain kind of person in the hood that had this attitude about themselves, that engaged in these particular kind of arts. Now you get this particular kind of person, and miraculously, our basic attitude from the Bronx became the attitude of the world. Now, this is magnificent. This was called being cosmopolitan, that your being, your way, is the way of the whole world. Now, we didn't know this at the time. We thought we was just rhyming to each other, breaking with each other, dancing with each other, putting up art with each other. but not knowing that this attitude was the attitude of the whole world. This is what the world felt like. It's just we might have been the first to express it. We might have had the opportunity to express it first, but when we expressed it, others got a chance to see it and said, man, that's me too. That's me too. Not just so much the art, breaking MC and graffiti or DJing, yeah, I could do that too. I'm talking about the attitude that hip hop gives off. You know, that kind of attitude that hip hop gives off, it strengthens people. So in the midst of this question coming to an end here, what are the potentials of hip hop? I argue that hip hop has the potential to unite the world. I am united with Kurtis Blow, with Elder Kurtis Blow, in the sense that I'm another one who believes that hip hop's true origin is divine. I think that God created hip hop in response to our oppression, to what we were dealing with. I think our parents prayed hip hop into existence. They were going crazy. And they prayed. Our parents were praying people. And they prayed themselves and prayed for their children. And when the actual answer comes, you know, if you keep up on any kind of spiritual doctrine, when the answer comes, it's never the answer you expect. It's never what you thought it was going to be. And so I argue that hip hop's potential, the potential of hip hop, has a lot to do with leading us toward a spiritual victory, leading us back toward our divinity as African people. Because remember, those griots and those DJs, those were also priests.
Yes.
These were spiritual-minded people. They knew something beyond this material world. Hip-hop is bringing us back to that. Yes. So I would argue, just in this sense, that the potential of hip-hop is really the return of God on earth, the return of divinity on this planet. Hip-hop has the potential to actually unite people and reemerge our ancient African spirituality. That's my take on it. I'll throw it to Melle Mel because I just saw his face, and then let us all weigh in on it.
Well, I think the potential of hip hop, especially with the 50th anniversary, is that it has to come a point where we have to step out, where we have to promote. You know, because the only thing that's the standout thing in an anniversary in the 50th years of hip hop is what everybody did within them first couple of years. You see what I'm saying? And with the 50th anniversary, it kind of gets overlooked at the fact that what Herc did, or what everybody else that came directly behind Herc, because once the table was set, most of everybody else just sat down and the plate was there. Everybody, you know, everybody could eat off hip hop. It was all inclusive. Hip hop never, you know, turned nobody away. You see what I'm saying? Everybody was always welcome. If you had the talent, you know what I mean, or if you was just was around, hip hop allowed you to sit at the table. But now, after 50 years later, it's almost criminal that, you know, and I don't see nothing wrong with Jay-Z or what he did, or any of these guys that got all that money, Rick Ross, but they are not supposed to be the most important thing in hip hop. And we're not supposed to be the least wealthy in hip hop. We supposed to have what they have simply because, just like how Sha Rock said, we made the catalyst of what turned into $1 billion industry
with little or no resources.
And this is what it's, we deserve our flowers. No, we deserve a check like how y'all got a check. And I mean, and it ain't like I'm gonna build generational wealth. I'm a party dude. I'm gonna fuck my money up anyway, but I'm supposed to have the money to fuck up. Because of what we did, and we gonna and at some point we're gonna have to step out. We can't be like oh yeah, well, you know, I'm glad that I'm acknowledged. No, the pleasure was all yours. The pleasure was all yours, and not only to be acknowledged, but to be revered and to be financially reciprocated because of what we did. Because, like I said, the important part of the 50th anniversary is not the last 10 years. What did that do? It's barely hip hop. Anything that went on in the last 10 years, the main part about it is what happened in the first 15 years. Whereas hip hop came out of gangs into the music. And then 50 years later, or 40 years later, it took a turn in the other direction. And then they kind of pat us on the back, but then they still throw at us, well, it was something that we could have did to talk to, and it's nothing that, they did what they wanted to do, like we did what we wanted to do. But the point to be taken is they not supposed to be as important, and we're not supposed to be as far as financially. It's in all, like in other words, and everybody that's on this call right now, somebody from this group of people or from this era of people has to be one of them half a billionaires. It has to be at least one, and then we could figure out a way to get everybody, you know what I'm saying, to get everybody financially viable because of what we did 50 or 40. Herc was the 50-year guy, but because of what we did 45 years ago.
Sha Rock, what's the potential of hip hop?
Well, the potential is all of us. And I want to say you first. Why? Because you have that, not that we all don't have that voice, but you are out there. You are considered to be the teacher. We all teach, but you're out there. You have the platform. You have the following. It is not just our responsibility, but your responsibility, as you have been doing, to ensure that when we are celebrating the elements and we say hip hop culture, it is not just the rap aspect. We have to make sure that we hold people accountable for when they say this is hip hop culture. Well, if you're not celebrating all the elements, it is not hip hop culture. You're just celebrating one element of hip hop culture, which is the rap aspect. So I just want to say, for all of us being out there, we have to ensure that people understand when we out there talking, that we're out there talking and ensuring that people understand that these are the elements that solidify hip hop culture and not just the rap element. That's one of the main things I want to see. And I co-sign on what Melle Mel said as well.
Yeah, no, let me just say this. I'm gonna have to pack because we get ready to go out to LA to show these dudes what 50 years of hip hop is. So I was, what I'm saying. But I'll have to get off the Zoom, and because we got that. I got a flight to catch in a couple. But I love what we're doing. I love what we stand for. And Kurt, you already know, baby. Let's do what we do. The chairman. Caz, I love all y'all.
Yeah.
Hey, Mel.
Yeah.
I gotta get with you about being this B-boy thing, brother. We need you in our documentary. We need you.
All right, I'm there.
He was a B-boy. I seen him.
Absolutely. All right, y'all.
That's
God bless.
Yo,
All right, y'all.
I see you at the gym, man.
All right.
Yeah, me and Mel work out at the same gym.
Well said. My mic was muted. No, well said, especially that unity part on the way out. Kurtis Blow one up, and I obviously so, the headliner, potential as we go out. What do you see for the future?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, I got you.
Okay, number one, we have this beautiful culture, hip hop. It's the number one genre of music in the world. Everyone over the globe, everyone around the world is tuning in to hear what hip hop has to say. So we have a voice, and it's a very powerful voice. We changed the world already. We already changed the world. So we have the potential of not only changing the world again, but having everyone listen to what we are saying. And we are the voice of the people. So my whole thing, I want to just reiterate what Trixie said. You know, it's all about peace, unity, love. And I'm going to change that last part to get some money. Peace, unity, love, and let's get some money. So with that said, you know, we at the Hip Hop Alliance, we have started a Legends Fund. It's an endowment fund for all of our OGs, our pioneers, our legendary, honorary hip hop pioneers can get some money. I'm talking about this Legend Fund is gonna be created so that we can take donations from all of these major corporations around the world, talking about, yeah, we love hip hop. All right, so here's the Legend Fund. Give back to the people who created it, right? So this Legends Fund is going to be a fund that has emergency funds for any of our legends who need to pay a bill, who need to, you know, get some medical help, medical attention. And it's also going to have a pension and retirement fund attached to it as well. So people can get some money, a big check when they retire, something that will let them not only survive, but thrive in their old age. So that's what we're doing with the Hip Hop Alliance. That is our future. We want to unite all of hip hop together, be a united force, because with a united force, that's a lot of power and we can make a lot of change. There's a lot of legislation that needs to be created and supported, like the AMFA, the American Music Fairness Act, where now hip hoppers and R&B artists can get paid royalties from AM and FM radio, right? There's the Rap Act, where it says that artists cannot be thrown in jail, or their lyrics cannot be used in court against them, right? That's another one. Here's the Crown Act is another one, legislation where you cannot get fired. It doesn't matter how you wear your hair. You can have dreads, you can have braids, you can have a afro, it doesn't matter. You don't have to cut it if you're in the army, you know, how they cut your hair and all that stuff. The way you wear your hair is not an issue to government or your job or even travel, right? There's another bill that's so incredible out in California. They started a reparations bill. They're going to give $200,000 to each descendant of slavery in California. We need to take that law and spread it nationally. That's what we do at the Hip Hop Alliance. We combat and we promote fair wages and fair royalties. And when it comes to different issues, we take the local issues and we spread them nationally. And so that's our future at the Hip Hop Alliance. And I think the potential of hip hop is so great. We have the world listening in, so we can do whatever we want. We can change the world again. And we are the voice of the people. So let's just listen to the people and see what they want and try to give it to them, because we have the power in our numbers and our unity if we stand together.
Well said. This is going to conclude our conference. And I'd like to just echo what you just said, Elder Kurtis. The Hip Hop Alliance is a hip hop organization on a mission to promote fair wages, fair royalties, IP ownership, that's intellectual property ownership, and strong health and pension benefits for the hip hop and R&B communities. This is our mission statement, and this is what we're all about. I urge you all to go to go to our website and hit that donation button as well. Join in. Don't just sit there and listen and, you know, be just just there. Join in, get active, and so on. We had a robust conversation tonight. Actually, I learned a lot. I hope you guys did as well. I want to thank everyone. Melle Mel, of course, Grandmaster Caz, Dancing Doug, of course, Kurtis Blow, Trixie, and MC Sha Rock. Of course, I am KRS-One. Thank you to KBJ and Sun One on our tech in that sense. Let me throw G Simone in there on the emails and so on, backstage stuff as well. This is the Hip Hop Alliance, and we're out. Thank you. Thanks for listening.
Don't be afraid. Don't be ashamed. We want black power. 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 That's right. That's what we want. Black power. We don't have to be ashamed of it.
This is not a regular, this is that boom, blah, blah, blah. Some they call it secular, I just call it black, black, black. Marcus Garvey, Bookman Dottie, bring that army back, back, back. Malcolm X and Kwame Ture, this is where I'm at. If you wanna talk to me about black, black, black. Haile Selassie the first, Negus Nagas, let's talk about that. Kaboom, Yanni Maroon and all the Maroons, let's talk about that. The real Underground Railroad, the first subway for black, black, black. The freedom train begins with your brain. Get in on track. Whether justice or injustice, how do you react? Can you stand there laughing while they shoot us in the black, black, black? This is what some rappers sound like every time they rap. I'm raising up the red and the green and the black, black, black. Even with no cops in the hood, we still hear click, click, clack, clack, clack. I cannot forget my ancestors just because I rap. Look at me from top to bottom. KRS is black, black, black. Get up, get out, speak up, speak out, reach up, reach out. This is what black about. Get up, get out, speak up, speak out, reach up, reach out. This is what I rap about. Get up, get out, speak up, speak out, reach up, reach out. Too many selling out. Get up, get out, reach up, reach out, lift up, lift out, yes out. Time to ask the question now, are you really black, black, black? It is not a mystery, we under attack. If you're chatting fuckery, you whole our people black, black, black. Time to put aside the fantasy and deal with fact. This is not the time to be talking all that crap. Those that talk that crap, are those that don't fight back. You can say what you like, but real skill I never lack. Black is more a consciousness, the way you think and act. Yo, get up, get out, speak up, speak out, reach up, reach out. This is what black about. Get up, get out, speak up, speak out, reach up, reach out. This is what I rap about. Get up, get out, speak up, speak out, reach up, reach out. Too many selling out. Get up, get out, reach up, reach out, lift up, lift out, get out, lights out.
We have stayed here and we begged the president. We begged the federal government. That's all we've been doing, begging. It's time we stand up and take over. We have to do what every group in this country did. We got to take over the communities where we outnumber people so we can have decent jobs, so we can have decent houses, so we can have decent roads, so we can have decent schools, so we can have decent justice.
Welcome to the Hip Hop Alliance Black History Conference. and we thank all of you for being here today. I am KRS-One. I am joined here today by Erica Ford, of course, Professor James Smalls, my man Chuck D right there, L. Michelle McCrae, and the way you said your name actually was poetic. That's why I'm sitting here trying to say it the same way. El Michelle McCrae. We're all here discussing this. We'll be joined later by others. Shout out to Tara L. Martin as well. Kurtis Blow is on the line with us as well. So is KBJ and Sun One. G. Simone is here with me as well in this little quaint room we're in here. So we're all part of this discussion. We're talking about defining Black in America as a total title, but then we're going to get into some other pieces. We're going to hear from all of our panelists today. I'm going to start off with some of the traditional definitions of Blackness from really from a Black power point of view. And I start here because as we all explain or begin to talk about Blackness from our perspective, I'm hoping that we can get different shades, for lack of a better term, different perspectives on what Blackness actually is in the United States today. There are different levels to this, and one answer is probably not going to be the answer, but if we can have a discussion that sort of forms an answer, we can get to a solution. So that's, of course, the point to this whole thing. Let me read you real quick. This is H. Rap Brown. H. Rap Brown from the 60s, a Black revolutionary all day and night, Black Panther Party and so on. Here's his quote, we must learn that Black is not a color, but the way you think. If we are to succeed in the struggle, we must eliminate the significance that we have assigned to color in our community. Among Black people, color can have no value, no significance. Commitment will determine the value of individuals, end quote. A Pictorial History of Black Americans. This is a book by Langston Hughes, Milton Meltzer, and C. Eric Lincoln. They point this quote, being Black in the contemporary world is not so much a matter of skin color as it is a state of mind, an attitude about the value of persons and of their rights as human beings without regard to such physical accidents as color. To be Black is to adopt a cultural response which denies and negates the traditional implications of being white or non-white or Negro. We are without reference to what others may name us or name themselves, end quote. 1971, this is For Blacks Only, a book called For Blacks Only, Black Struggles for Change in America. This is by Sterling Tucker. Quote, it was Stokely Carmichael with his call for Black power that captured not only the headlines, but the imagination of the Blacks who were participating. It was he who drew the cheers and voiced the spirit. Black power at that point was not yet a rejection of nonviolence. It was rather a new awareness of the self as a person of pride and dignity who did not want to be submissive in claiming his rights. I want to stand on my own feet to get my rights. I don't want to plead for them on my knees. I will bow no more. I will not wait for the sweet by and by or look to the Lord for my comfort. I'm going to do something for myself and I'm not going to be afraid. That was the mood. And it made me, for one, feel good, end quote. Black scholar and activist Leroy Jones, Amiri Baraka, put it this way, end quote, put it this way, quote, Black power, the power to control our lives, ourselves, all of our lives, our laws, our culture, our children, their lives, our total consciousness, Black orientated. We do not speak of the need to live in peace or universal humanity, since we are peaceful humanists seeking the spiritual resolution of the world. The unity of all men will come with the evolution of the species that recognizes the need for such. The Black man does. The Black man is a spirit worshiper as well. The religious science and scientific religion is the Black man's special evolutionary province. He will reorder the world as he finds his own rightful place in it. The world will be reordered by the Black man finding such a place. Such a place is itself the reordering. Black power, Black power. Power of the majority is what is meant. The actual majority in the world of colored people. This is the last one by Black revolutionary Professor Kathleen Cleaver. This is a famous quote too. Quote, everybody knows all the people don't have liberties, all the people don't have freedom, all the people don't have justice, and all the people don't have power. So that means that none of us do. Take this country and change it. Turn it upside down and put the last first and the first last, not just for Black people, but for all people. Now I start here just with just some quotes. Obviously, these are very surface, but these are quotes coming not only from the 60s, coming up to now, about what Blackness is. And right away, you hear from a traditional point of view that Blackness is not necessarily a skin color, it's actually an attitude and way of life, or the way you think, the way you view the world. Now, there's some debate with that as well, because there is a physicalness to being Black as well. Like some people will argue that, say for instance, there is no such thing as race. Because race, and we're going to get into that a little later on. There is no such thing as race because race is created by the courts, race is created by immigration, race is arbitrary, there's nothing scientific with it, and so on. Yet, our entire society is based on race. We're making race real. So, what are we making Black real? What do we perceive as Black? This is what our traditional view is. Kathleen Cleaver is talking about rights for all people, not just Black people, but Black power as human power, as human, instead of civil rights, human rights, this kind of thing. Leroy Jones talks about, poet, I'm only using that name, talks about laws and the governance of our community in that sense. Let's start actually coming off that, because Professor James Smalls, you might be closer in understanding to a lot of these views than us on this panel. Can I start with you, Professor James Smalls, with the question, defining Black in America?
Yes, sir. And that has changed over the decades. And that's why we came to the point where we're saying African American, which become very controversial at some point. But it is a fundamental question about history and identity. Dr. Asa Hilliard said that true freedom is to be shackled to your identity. So when we say Black, what identity are we trying to make clear? Because other people have fought for their power and their space within this geopolitical arena called America. The Asians have, the Chinese have separated nation groups, the Japanese have, the Germans, the white Anglo-Saxons have, the white Jews have. People have fought for their space and they've defined themselves in terms of their historical track. So I have a term, it says history will erase the mystery. There's no way to be Black unless Black means African, you see. And as we go back, from the very beginning of time, our first organizations, Prince Hall, Freemasonry, the African Free Lodge, 1700s, right? We have the African Society in the 1800s. We've got the African Methodist Episcopal Church, 1700s. We have the African Baptist Church. In 1892, we have the Afro-American League. So people are constantly, from the very beginning of our experience here, kept trying to define themselves in relationship to our motherland, our Genesis space, because that space isn't just geography. It's genetic, it's cultural, it's spiritual, and definitely it's historical. And so when we say Black, and I remember, you know, I grew up in the 60s, because I'm probably the oldest one here. I remember when we were fighting for Black power. I was in SNCC at that time. And we weren't fighting for color power. We were talking about power for a people who were defining themselves as Black because that was a move from a position where others was defining us as Negro and had given a very negative connotation to that definition. And so we wanted a more positive connotation to that definition. And even during the period when we are struggling to call ourselves Negroes, there were people in America calling themselves by different African names, the Sudanese this, the Malian this, the Moors this. There were other communities struggling to find a definition for this population of people. And I think the most appropriate population name, if we were to use it, would be just African, you know? And if we're gonna give a geopolitical definition, African would be the racial and the cultural and the historical definition, but then there's a geopolitical definition. We are located someplace. That's where the African, which represents our race, and American, which represent a geopolitical space. So within this geopolitical space, we're struggling around some fundamental questions concerning economic, politics, and cultural control over the space that we are living in, those who are calling themselves Black. So in order to get control of that space, we must define the group who's trying to control the space. That's ourselves. And that's why when Asa said to be true freedom is to be shackled to your identity, and Wade Nobles would follow that by saying, power is the ability to define your reality and have other people respond to that definition as if they were their own. And so when we talk about being Black in America, I'm talking about being an African, trying to define my reality based on my historical experience in the nearly 500 years that we've been in the space, including, you know, we got to include, when we say America and the United States is hard because we are the Caribbean, we're Central South America, and we are Canada also. And there has been an amalgam of all of these Africans coming from different spaces. And one other thing I'll say, then I'll shut up on it. We are the largest, if we want to say racial group, if we want to break it down to ethnic nation in North America, in the United States, because we are the only people where the state defines those who are Black but speak another language by the language they speak rather than by the ethnic nation or racial group they're part of. So our Hispanic, African, Black peoples are not defined with the rest of the Black people as far as the state of America is concerned. And that should be a great concern for us, because when we include our French-speaking African Black people from the Caribbean, Martinique, from Haiti and others, and we include our Spanish-speaking from all over Central South America and the Caribbean, we constitute nearly 100+ million people in the United States of America, which makes us the largest ethnic nation and certainly the largest racial nation in the Western Hemisphere. And so we have to redefine what we mean by Black, I think, in today's world. And Black should not be defined divorced from our African root. That's the best I can do with that one.
That's well said. Well said. Let me weigh in on that. Not even let me weigh on that. Erica, can I hear from you on that as well? I mean, we're starting with obviously an African root, which clearly is our root in well, everything that Professor Smalls just laid out. You know, what is this definition of Black? What is this? I would still challenge all of these titles that we're giving ourselves. Smalls?
Pero yo soy panameña, so no es Black. No. But I understand what you're talking about. A lot of times when I was growing up, most of the people from Panama didn't want to be Black, right? They didn't want to be assimilated to being Black, right? For me, Spanish was my first language. I spoke Spanish, and hanging out with my Black friends, they didn't speak Spanish, so I gave it up and didn't continue speaking Spanish, right? And so everything is relative, right? When we came here as a people, we forged a nation within a nation, right? And that's where the Black nation came from, right? And so therefore we looked at ourselves as being a Black nation inside of a Black people, Black power, Black self-determination, Black land, Black businesses, Black culture, right? And so therefore, those things that you just raised, we took it, we embodied it, right, as Black people. But because we are in an oppressive state, they came to destroy our culture. They came to destroy our mindset, right? And so they diverted us from being Black. And so when you talk about all of the different titles that they give us and all of the different reasons they stop us from uniting as one people, is because they understand the power of us all, right? And so our definition of Black in society gets railroaded by those who are teaching our children, those who are teaching our families. And so I would say that in some sense, we have to go back to the collective body, right? And be cool. Most people didn't unite because it was the whole thing about being African American. People was like, I ain't from Africa. I was born in North Carolina. I was born in Alabama. I ain't come over from no Africa, right? So we are dealing with the mindset of our people, and how do we elevate them, but not push them into a wall that they don't even understand who they are, right? How do we articulate, as Chris was saying, from this conversation to our young people to make them be proud of being Black, right? Whether they're from Haiti, whether they're from Panama, wherever they're from, we are a proud people. We built the pyramids, right? And so Black comes with a sense of pride, sense of dignity, a sense of power, a sense of understanding that we have an ability to really build and transform a world. We are geniuses. We are, in all of those people, we are soldiers, right? There's different things, but the world doesn't want us to understand our Blackness, right? They want us to relate to being a nigga, right? And eliminate, or being a bitch, or being a hoe, right? And so how do we shift the mindset of young people to being Black? Because Black, they can say Black Lives Matter now, but I remember when we was in the streets and saying Black Power, people are getting isolated, people are getting targeted, people are getting killed, right? And now it's a swag. You got swag, you got culture, you down, you woke if you say Black Lives Matter. But they're diluting Black lives, right? Because it doesn't come with Black power, right? It's just your life matters. But what does that mean when your life matters? Matters to who? What is the matter bringing you, right? And I'm not trying to negate anybody's struggle or movement, but what I'm saying is we got to put some power in our lives that matter. And we got to go back to the question of even how we formed a nation within a nation, our landmass that we came and forged and built, right? And go back to creating in our communities where we are a majority, teaching our children, owning the stores, regaining the power of pushing our culture back to being proud and of dignity and of lifting our nation and our education and so on and so forth. And it not being like, that's one thing over there, and if something else, like we've been put in boxes too long, and we got to get out of boxes and get back to being Black,
You're making me think. You obviously you are making me think. No, but what you're saying right here is, well, just real quick, answer me this real quick. Is the definition of Black only defined by white terrorism? Can we think of the definition of Black outside of white culture? And if so, what does it look like? Chuck D, we haven't heard from you yet. If you want to tackle that. What does Black culture look like outside of white terrorism? It's actually a two-part question, because the first part is are we defining our culture based on white terrorism? That's what, everything that is Black, like you say, what is Black in America? The first thing we start with is, well, these white folk over here, we got to get past that. Is that real? But is that really the case? Is that really the case? And then, of course, what is our culture in your mind? I'm gonna ask everybody this as well, so get your minds ready. What is our culture outside of white culture in your mind?
It could be one of the cases. Number one, when I titled "Fear of a Black Planet," and in 1990. I was 30 years old, and that came off the heels of absorbing ISIS papers, and Dr. Francis Cress Welsing and Harry Allen was in my left ear, and everybody else was in my right ear. And I said, we have advantages and we have numbers. And the numbers that we do have, we never got a shot to ever talk about it. And do y'all hear that dog in the back? Is it loud?
It's cool.
All right, it's cool because all right. So I'm just gonna bark louder. The face value, darker people of the earth, and all my travels around every single continent except for the Arctic and Antarctica, and you might have did those, Chairman or our elder, have caught the most hell, and also have the least of the planet Earth as far as what white society would call the most useful. But Fear of a Black Planet was that statement that says, there's a fallacy of the white quote unquote race being pure and walking around the planet and marching around the planet saying it was a pure race. I'm like, well, the world is already a place of color. One thing I always also found a knock on what Dr. Small also said is like, we cannot not include Africa into our everyday tongue of who we are and what we're out of, because that smacks right back. If that's going to be the seed, then we got to pay attention to the diaspora at all times. I always said that in a 2,000 by 3,000 mile box of the United States of America, it's actually derogatory to just say we're Americans when we don't acknowledge a diaspora. And I always said, if you just think that you're American instead of a USAer, and you detach the diaspora, we'll always be a slave in this little box if we don't expand the terrain. We're Africans, but also what Dr. Small said, we are probably the best example of Americans because we are all of America, and the construct of white in the United States of America is less on the numbers and populations. But if you take geography and a history away from a people, you have slavery. If you accept it, you have volunteer slavery. I even look at the construct that we could get into. Everybody else probably is going to get into that because we know this of the Negro, the color to black thing, quite eloquently spoken. But I look at this recent situation with the Memphis police and the splashing of black in the media, and I reserve no comment because I see that black is being used as a 3-card money game in a digital realm where avatars are now used as outer skin to fit in that space of what black was fought for. That's the space of blackness is now this outer skin called an avatar. Maybe we have an outer skin called an Afritar, because we cannot detach Africa, even if we're going into the realms of artificial intelligence in the digital age of the 21st century. I don't make light of any scholarships or any scholars because they read everything. They read the things that we choose not to read because we like to read things that make us feel good or confident about ourselves. But a Dr. John Hendrik Clark and Dr. Francis Cress Welsing and Lambi Brath, people read everything, even till they got blind. So when they actually speak and we're able to process that as a people, we have to pay attention if the majority of them point to Africa as something that we cannot avoid in our narrative, in our conversation, then our spaces will be taken. Although I agree with black is us around the world. It's a black planet. But increasingly into the 21st century, I don't think we can get away from the fact that Africa got to be in our narrative on everything just so we could anchor our inner selves, because our outer selves especially coming through a screen or digital, they can make it appear and then disappear. People don't really know what to say or what to think when they see 6 Black cops in Memphis, you know, with a young Black man being murdered in the same city. When I was 8 years old, Dr. Martin Luther King was murdered. So you got Memphis, Black faces, Black murder, Black death. It's coming. Okay, where does Africa figure into being this extension to make us understand that Blackness is not just a thing? You know, Stevie Wonder is Black, but how does he know that? How does he know that he's Black? I used to always wonder as a kid, he's blind, how do he know he's Black? You know what I'm saying? How do they know? It has to be more than just what your avatar says. And I just think that we went through a period where our skin was our avatar. Now our mindset and our soul has to be realigned, especially in the area coming up, or maybe era coming up, where now you see it, now you don't. So who are you aligning with? Watch the 3 clams on the table. Now you see it, that cat over there, you're looking at it now, what you thought you saw, you don't see no more. How do we avoid those games? So I just think that Africa at least anchors us. It anchors us to at least have a seed of a starting conversation of saying what Black is in 2025. In my personal opinion.
And duly noted.
Yeah.
You know what? You just said something profound right there. I just want to repeat it one more time. How does Stevie Wonder knows that he is Black? Now, you know, for a philosopher like me, I'll sit on that for 2 hours like a dog with a bone, because that's just about sums up this first piece we're talking about in terms of Blackness being more than a skin tone, although we are connecting it to a geographical place. And we're looking at Africa as that starting ground there. What you just said about Stevie Wonder, how does he can't see that he's Black, but he knows that he's Black. What is that knowing? What is that? I think that is profound. Something that we all should think about. If we could not see ourselves, how would we know we are Black? Or how would we know we are anything we was educated to be? Because think about that as a minute. I mean, what if Stevie Wonder was brought up in a white household and was told his whole life he was white? You know, I mean, we don't have an example.
May I cut in, Chris, for a minute?
Please.
Yeah. Because when we talk about Africa a lot of times, and we talk about it as a place, and we talk about it as the place where the color of the skin come from, we rarely talk about it as having an ideological perspective, and has had one for hundreds of thousands of years. We rarely talk about it as being undergirded by a philosophical perspective of what life is about. And it has it for hundreds of thousands of years. We talk about African religion, but we never assign it the theology that it expresses. And so when we are saying Black, even when I was young, and I grew up on a plantation in the woods of South Carolina, raised by a root woman who told me we were from Africa because daddy came from Africa and her mama came from Sierra Leone. So she knew where she was from. And as I grew into this thing, Black was, when we said Black in the city, we meant Africans. We knew we meant Africa when we were saying Black. It wasn't like we were looking for another space, but we couldn't get to Africa, Erica, because a lot of our people were doing this. So Black was the closest step to get without having the people run away. But what has occurred in this new realm, and this is where your agenda of cultural addition, because I don't view hip hop as a separate culture. Hip hop is African culture as manifest from the conditions in North America that spread it across the entire world. And so let's look at culture, and our elders tell us that culture is the primary education system of a people. It also say that the ultimate function of education is to secure the survival of a people. I think it was Mama Marimba who said that culture protects the people from genocide. Now, if culture is your primary educational system, then the voice we use to sing, the instrument we play. These are the tools of culture. Dance is the tools of culture. What is it we are trying to convey with that music? What is it we are trying to convey with the dance and the body movements? What are we saying? We're using it as a method of teaching. We can go back to bebop, hip hop, rag, blues, always doing the same thing in their time, trying to tell the people, you exist, you are, and I'm an expression of your beingness. And this music allows you to be in a space that allows you to spiritually exist and respond to your environment without your enemy even understanding that you're doing it. And so we need to really take a new look when we say Africa, because Africa is the universe. We exist when nothing else existed, you know, and they've tried to reduce us to a couple of 100 years or a couple of 1,000 years. We're talking millions of years of this organism evolving. We're the best of our ancestors' genes. We're the latest version and the highest tech model of those ancestors. And when we get clear that culture is essential for the political struggle to be informed on its direction, culture is essential for the economic struggle to be informed on its direction, then we'll understand how to re-educate our people into their culture. A young brother from Nigeria wrote a book recently called Rebirthing African Consciousness. And that's what the struggle must be about right now, a rebirthing of African consciousness, using the best of our cultural tools and instruments to convey the concept, ideas, and principles we want these young people to get when we tell them about history. Because that's how they link themselves up to me and you, and not run away from us. That's kind of preachy, but I'm old school preachy.
No, I hear you. I tell you, I had the audacity. I was born in 1960, but I would tell you, the first 25 years of my life up to 1985, I swore I had advantages that nobody else had. Because being in the I had the blessings of being taught and raised and trained, but I never thought I was at a disadvantage. I was like, man, I got so many advantages. It's almost like in a martial arts move. I see 3 moves. I see you coming with your move. I know you. You don't know me. And that was always my advantage wherever I went. I was never intimidated by being outnumbered in the United States of America, although I was blessed to come up in a kind of like a melting pot. In New York, it's a melting pot. Some of us got melted first, but I'm saying that in any realm that I entered, I felt like I got so many advantages, man. They can't F with me. This is before I just got into music and that aspect, because I said, not only I had to know everything about y'all and not to put the dividing line there, but I had to learn everything. But I knew so much and learned so much about ourselves. I said, it's impossible for me not to have an advantage and also spread my advantages to those who might feel that they're at an inferior disadvantage. And I just think that that spirit was a target, the 80s, 90s COINTELPRO, that the third chapters of that, and as far as the last 50 years, the third chapters of that as being a focal point and a target to once again go at. Because if you have all these people who the society is saying they're tucked under and they all feel that they have an advantage, that's something like, how do we absorb that juice, that confidence out of them? We can't take their skin color yet, but how do we take that spirit and that soul and absorb it into American culture or world culture without being accountable for where it came from, and kind of like recycle it back into young seeds coming up and say, damn, I'm always at a damn advantage. It wasn't arrogance, but it was defensive confidence, at least in my opinion. I've been called crazy, so.
Look, our whole community has been called crazy. That leads us into trauma, the cultural trauma you brought up real quickly. And I'm still looming around this question of what is Black culture, but I'm going deeper into what is Black culture without white culture. I'm looking for also our independence as a people. Can we be defined only by the terrorism that we're facing?
Chairman, could I ask you a question, Chairman?
Yes.
Do you believe human beings have glitch like in this day and time? Do you think that human beings have unavoidable glitches?
Yes. Yes.
You know, when you talk about trauma, generational trauma, when you talk about the growth of our consciousness from Africa to where we are right now, the intentional generational trauma was caused by the desire to erase the history and the culture and the power of a nation of people, right? And so things happened in our lifespan, from the killing of slaves, from the taking the baby, from the selling the husband, from the denying people to sing, and just in terms of how we express our culture and so on and so forth. And then we still gave birth to greatness, right? As Chuck said, we have an advantage. And with that advantage, people built things. People still faced the terrorism and fought it back, right? People still was able to engage in great means of transitioning how they showed up in society and how we maintain control of our children's mind, right? And so we go back and forth with that. And they have, when you talk about the terrorism and the trauma, and they go hand in hand, our children in a lot of our communities live in terror every day, right? Every day. So, and it is because they're Black, because they are descendants of Africa, right? And I think that most people, when they talk about, well, being Black, it is not without the connection of the motherland, right? But folks came here and forged a nation within a nation, right? And to our children, because we talked at the beginning about what are we teaching our children and how do we get them to understand their lessons, right? There's always a prerequisite in your lessons, and you learn one lesson first, and then you take the next lesson, and then you master the whole class, you get your master's or your PhD, and that's of course their system of knowledge, but everything is levels, it's a process, because our minds don't take a lot at one time, or they do, and we just block it off or whatever. But I would say that the trauma that we experience in our community from generation to generation has caused a diversion in how we show up, right? And so you talked about Memphis and those Black men. Some of them show up like that because they want to assimilate with a mindset that doesn't belong to them, that they think they'll benefit from. And some of them show up like some of the music in our culture that kills and maims our people, or some of them show up literally killing and maiming our people, right? And it's not who they are. It is who they have become through these years of trauma and the inability to have the tools to heal and transform and deal with their trauma. So they pick up that gun as a form of healing and dealing with their trauma, or they take it out on those closest to them, like Frantz Fanon talked about in the Wretched of the Earth. But if we can begin to go back, just even with our brothers and sisters in the 5% Nation, they used to have ciphers on the corners, and they used to build and study. And that whole question of knowledge and studying, and we used to have a lot of sessions, in whether it was the December 12th movement, whether it was James Smalls and on 135th Street, 145th Street, you know, and the different classes. There was a lot of studying that we did. Olambe Brad, you named some folks, John Henry Clark, Olambe Brad, Adelaide Sanford, there was studying that we did as a people. I remember we used to sit down and study in the December 12th movement every week, right? Because in our culture, our people across the nation, we don't study as a people anymore. It's not something that is cool and done, and those things happen to, because when you ask a young person now, they don't know, they don't know. They're so broken from our history of the Black struggle and our connection to Africa and so on and so forth. So I would say in this conversation, it is reigniting that desire to understand where you come from, to understand your legacy and your cultural powers and who you are and what you're made of. Because when you understand what you're made of and who you are, you show up different in the earth. You know?
Absolutely. Let me tell you, and all the things that Erica just said, over the years, we were building layers of how to restore ourselves. And now we have to consolidate that body of wisdom, that knowledge, that understanding that has occurred in the last 5, 6 decades. Let me just, when you said something, Chairman, about culture, you remember there's a term, it's called socialization process. That's how people get their values, their interests, and their principles. And the instrument that's now controlling the socialization is the public school system for the most part, the contemporary music that's dominant in the culture today, and the political institutions that regulates all of these things. So they're socializing the people. But we have an instrument, like Erica was talking about, the time when we were trying to find a way to socialize. Slave theater, First World Alliance, December 12th, New African Movement. And we had study groups everywhere. But what were we teaching? Let me show you something about Africa. Have you ever seen The Last Supper, a painting of The Last Supper, right? Most people see it, they don't know what they're looking at. There's a man sitting in the middle with a halo around his head, right? And then on either side of him, he's got 6 people, right? But if you look at the picture, each of the 6 is in 2 clusters of 3, right? And so the man represents the sun. That's why the light is coming from his head, because it's not talking about people at all. This is an anthropomorphic representation of a solar drama. The 12 people represents the 12 months. The 4 clusters of 3 represents the 4 seasons circulating around the sun. So Europe at that point in history was getting hold of African knowledge and trying, since they didn't read and write, they used pictures to create the anthropomorphic representation of African philosophy. If you truly understand what African philosophy is, and I must confess, I'm a priest in the Yoruba tradition, I'm a priest in the craft of ancient Kemet. And what we're taught is that our whole body of knowledge is about interpreting cosmology and ecology. It isn't something we're doing accidentally. What the West is calling science is really African spirituality. He just stripped it of its humanity, okay? But what he's calling science is our philosophical and ideological spiritual perspective on reality, of an advanced knowledge of cosmology, an advanced knowledge of ecology, put into dance and music and rituals and folklore and carvings to teach every day to a society how they should be, okay? And so if you look at Black music in America, let's just take music, for the last 80 years, listen to what they're saying. And most of that music was talking about loving, confronting, and overcoming. And that was straight out of Africa, because that's where we come from. You can't come straight out of nothing else. Like straight out of Compton, that's a recent phenomenon, which is real. But straight out of Africa, that's the real deal. Now put that on the philosophical shelf I just outlined to you. That's where our power lies. Knowing thyself, when Asa said, being shackled to your identity is true freedom.
So
I like to build on that and just be able to see if I could add kind of like a small statement or question onto that shelf panel. I mean, the practicality of being raised with the importance of the breath of life of in order, people, places, and things. In that order, I always knew that those and things will fall third because they were an acquisition. And this is kind of like a question, yet a statement thrown out there. The ability to adapt to the Western, to the wild, wild West, meaning that we had to like steer our spirit into another place, which is kind of like residing in the 21st century as survival. Like the indigenous nature of human beings in the past is like, you might call that mountain something, but you can't own that mountain and you can't own that river. You really can't own the earth. What you can probably do, have a sense of self, a sense of being rooted with some spirituality to the gods or the God, and then maybe embrace the places where human spirit or the growth is accepted and embraced. But in this century, it's just like, well, we gotta own Africa, and this is ours, and we gotta own this, and we gotta own that. And do you feel that the shift in when we were indigenous people said, basically looking side-eyed at the Western way, the European, like, how the hell this dude gonna own a mountain? Go ahead, see how far you could go with owning a river, and then all of a sudden, in order for that to take place, people were eradicated, mountains were renamed, and then taken. Land was kind of taken, which means that just as a catch-up, meaning like, you know what, we got to kind of like make claims to ownership of this earth just for our survival. That wasn't the intent, because we thought that, hey, there's a river, I could drink from it, you drink from it. What was the scope in Africa of, was it the same of the indigenous nature in the Americans and other places where, we got ambushed, or our people got ambushed with a thought philosophy of ownership as opposed to sharing and embracing and usage in a cyclical type of usage of life?
Well,
kind of like a question. When did that turning point throw us into this area where now we feel in the 21st century, I gotta own everything because it's been snatched, so we gotta claim it back? When really it was for everybody to share, and then it got butch kidded, as we used to say.
Right. Well, Erica talked about the trauma. Trauma informs behavior. So this thing of wanting to own rather than share, that even we have picked up as a tool, we think is a tool of survival, comes from the response to the trauma that took everything away from us. And somebody else was controlling access to it. So then we had to come up and go, okay, how are we going to get access to it? All right. And that means we have to learn how to control it like them. In the 60s, some of us picked up the guns. We lost a lot of comrades. And we found that wasn't the best methodology. We tried it, right? But it wasn't the best methodology. We were trying to imitate them and thought that they could be frightened into taking that step back off of us. Now, to some degree, they did, that after certain little incidents, we didn't have as much police brutality happening in the hood. But then they came back with new methodologies. You mentioned people, person, place, or thing. If you look in any African language, all African language, their word for God, their word for deity is either the prefix or the suffix of their word for person, people, place, or thing. So they felt that what we call the divine is in everything. And then it comes back to our earliest choice that nothing belongs to anyone, everything belongs to everyone. That's fundamentally African culture. But how do we get back to that space? So how do we get our children to understand this is the space we have to get back to, but there's some grounds we got to cross to get back to that space because some stuff has happened. And that's where history, erasing the mystery, becomes very important. How do we teach history in a way that children see it and that's where, again, I keep coming back to music because you brothers have been in that industry. Music has been the best conveyor of cultural messages of all of the forms of teaching, all right? Because it reaches the very inner sanctum of human consciousness through vibration and so forth. And so you can put a message on the note, if I can put it in that framework, and then send that note into deep consciousness. And that message would then get received. But that goes for any kind of message, bad message, good message, right? And so we have to fight then to get the good message of our history into the cultural tools of our community so that we can best inform the next generation of where we came from, where we are, and where we need to go to get back to where we came from.
That sounds like a rhyme right there.
I might be a rapper at the old age, 77, I'm rocking 78, so, you know, I need to do something different.
Don't get it started right now. We'll break out, right? You know, you said something very profound, and every time we say something, I'm taking these notes because if you're listening to us, it's not if you are, those that are listening to us, this is very important to pull out these certain pieces. Music and art, and dance was used as a means of informing people as to how to be. I think that just about sums it up. Music, art, and dance was used as a means of informing people as to how to be, how to be as a person. That's a high level of music, art, and dance too, by the way. To be able to construct a dance or something, an art or a piece of music that actually does instruct people to do that or move them in such a way. It's funny how you mentioned about putting information on a note so that it goes into the head. And then now look at the note, the word note. That's just so interesting. Writing, you know, sort of like writing on sound. As a note. We're coming up on our hour here as well. Those who have been listening to us, I urge you to join the HHA as well. You can go right to the website, click on membership is free. Join in on what we're doing. Our numbers matter. Numbers matter in what is called a union or collective bargaining or anything that deals with community.
Facts.
Competition. That's what this is about. So join the HHA. You see the type of conversations we're having. I want to wrap this up real quick. All of you.
Hold on. You froze in saying that. So if you could just say that one more time.
No problem. What I want to do at this time is thank everyone for coming and joining the HHA. I urge you all to go to other parts of the website, join the HHA. Membership is free, obviously. We're having conversations, obviously, about community, about culture, and so on. And like I was mentioning, this is not just about individualism. This is about collectivism. It's about us as a community. How do we move as a group? We were talking about a little bit about trauma. I want to get to solutions before we get off of this call. I want to wrap this up into, we're defining Black in America from a lot of different points of views. I hope our listeners are taking notes on this. But we kind of talked a little bit about trauma. We talked a little bit also about the tragic, obviously, events of Tyree Nichols, obviously. But I'd like to hear us talk a little bit solution-orientated. You know, I'll bring this last point up. It might take us into about an extra 15 minutes for each of us to take about 4 or 5 minutes each. You know, there's something to be said about us betraying ourselves. Within history, you know, when the Europeans came to this landmass, you know, they had other Native Americans that were willing to side with them against other Native Americans. You know, you had the Buffalo Soldiers as well, Black folk fighting to clear Native Americans. I mean, that's not the whole story, but basically Black folk are clearing the land of Native Americans as well. You have the West Indian Regiment as well, more toward England and dealing with that in the Caribbean and so on. Black folk being the best warriors against Black folk. White people have been using this, or sure, not white people, white colonists and imperialists in particular have been using this form of divide and conquer. And we just saw it with the case of Tyre Nichols. We all know what the police are really all about. We know the history of the police. We know what it's about. But what do we do when you always seem to have someone in our own camp that's willing to tell Massa that there was a meeting about freedom just the other night and giving up our leaders, betraying the movement, et cetera, with an eye towards solution? What can we advise our people? What can we advise our people against that kind of activity, this self-sabotage? You're headed for self-destruction. Is El Michelle still on with us? El Michelle McCrae, if you're still on with us, unmute your mic. If not,
we also have Dr. Bob Lee.
Well, you know what? Let me start with Dr. Bob Lee then, because we haven't heard from him, but I'd like us all to take about 2 minutes on this. We have traitors amongst us, and we always have had this within our history. And with an eye towards solution, what can we advise our people? How can we advise our people to be strong against this kind of self-destruction, betrayal of your own movement toward freedom? Dr. Bob Lee, I'll start with you, 2 minutes.
Yeah, I guess we just have to be reminded of the resilience of our people. You know, we've come through a whole lot. I mean, I looked up my family history. My last name would have been Cook, my biological father. And from the ages of 20 to about 35, if you look at people who are growing up in Winsboro, Fairfield County, South Carolina, a lot of them were dying of asphyxiation. They didn't just fall over and couldn't breathe anymore. They were being hung. So that disturbed me. That falls into that trauma category. But when we think about resilience of our people, we think about the times where, you know, when we came to this country, we weren't able to use our drums, which was so very important for communication. But we switched off to other means, like spirituals. And we sang stuff like, wade in the water, and things like that. And that meant, hey, if you're gonna try to escape and get away from what you were, you know, your captives, you know, get in that water and you can get away. The hound dogs can't sniff you out. So I just want to think about the resilience of our people and how we can overcome so many things. But it's always that, it always comes back to that thing of people moving together in the same direction for a common cause.
Wow. Chuck, you want to weigh in on that real quick? 2 minutes.
It goes back to that asking about the glitch in human beings. What was the turning point where, I know in the beginning, let's keep it hip hop, the beginning where I don't know what the end result is for me out of this, but I see this happening over there, and I'm so happy for that brother or that sister that's doing it, because I'm happy because they doing it. This whole thing of I'm happy because I'm happy for you is a title shift possibility in the future, as opposed to I'm getting it for me. And if something educationally or economically spread or environmentally could be figured somehow into that mental turnaround, or is there a glitch that says, you know, at the end of the day, man, it's dog bite dog, eat dog, dog. You know what I'm saying? It's like something to eradicate. Like, Chris, you do, I mean, I come from a time where whatever you did, I'm like, yo, in culture, which is rare. In sports, we do it all the time. You know why? Because we cheer for LeBron James because we can't do that. So we have to get in the seat and cheer for him. I'm with him. I'm with that. I'm happy for that. And whatever they get, I can't, but culture got a little bit reachable and hip hop got reachable from another narrative where it got to a point where I'm not really happy for that result more than my result. And I'm not saying this is a hip hop problem, but I'm saying if somehow it's a human thing that got flipped around on us that said, you know what, damn, man, my happiness is my brother's or my sister's result. And I'm good because they good. Something in the middle of that flipped it around to a different attitude.
My happiness is my brother's result.
Yeah.
That right there. Erica Ford, where you at? 2 minutes with an eye towards solutions. How do we get our people from betraying themselves and headed towards self-destruction?
So it's institutionalizing our work, right? Because at some point in time, we're not going to be here anymore. And so how do we institutionalize our teaching so that we can continue to teach folks about who they really are? When we just got this retail license to sell cannabis in New York State, we named our company Kush and Kemet because we wanted to teach our people about Kush and Kemet and the balance and where we come from, because people take our culture, as we talked about, and redefine. And so we build an institution called Life Camp. You build an institution, the Hip Hop Alliance, the museum, and all the work that we're doing. We have to have institutions so our children can come and learn. Because if we don't continue the cycle of education, then we can't break the cycle of miseducation, right? And so what we're doing and what a lot of folks, what y'all are doing, is what we have to continue to do. And it's building those things that can continue to teach self-determination and understanding who you are and where you come from. And we complete each other. We don't compete with each other. And so we continue the cycle of greatness.
Love it.
Wow. Oh, I'm still writing, Erica. You got me over here hugging. We complete each other, not compete. Come on.
And you know what? Just one other thing that when you talk about how we have to be okay with our people are sick. We have to understand that if you watch those lynching, that our people are sick and we have to help them heal, you know, and we have to be patient with their healing process because they, for so many years, have made us sick. And so how do we do that? By continuing to stand together and re-educate them, because these schools are criminalizing and miseducating them every day.
Professor James Smalls, can you take us out?
Yeah, thank you, Sister Erica. That was just beautifully stated. So I'm going to just kind of follow up on you. Because we go back to Denmark Vesey, somebody betrayed that rebellion. We go to Gabriel Pasha, somebody betrayed that rebellion. If we go to the Sudan, when Muhammad Ahmed had defeated Gordon and the British and took out 20,000 of their people, he was assassinated because somebody betrayed him and poisoned him. When Abdullah took over and was about to crush the British and the French, we didn't get the collaboration from Ethiopia that we needed because they took some money from somebody else. So, and Dr. Nobles referred to this concept that the sickness that Erica is talking about is a shattered consciousness and a broken Black identity. And that has occurred through terrorism and genocide over centuries. You know, we can't talk about the enslavement as though it was some work arrangement. It was genocide. It was terrorism. It still is genocide. It still is terrorism. And so when we talk about solutions, we come back to, and Erica raised it, self-love, know thyself. Chuck raised it. And the one piece we didn't get to, because I know sometimes we're scared to mess with the God piece, but you know, I can deal with the God piece a little bit, right? Let's talk about the God piece the way Africans do it. African culture, everyone that I've studied, see the human being as an extension of divinity. And thus the human being carried the potential of divinity. And so I saw a piece with Eartha Kitt the other night, And somebody was asking her about compromising to have a relationship with a man. And she said, what? Compromising to have a relationship? She said, no. I build my relationship based on my love for me being shared with someone else who have love for themselves. And so self-love, which comes from knowledge of self, which comes from history being appropriately taught, will begin to turn this thing around. And you can't separate history from economic, politics, and culture. You remember when they asked Malcolm X, Brother Minister Malcolm, what do you mean by Black nationalism? He said, you must control the economic, the politics, and the culture where you live. Not where somebody else lives. Don't oppress nobody else. But where you live, you got to be in charge of the essentials that will provide the food, clothing, shelter, safety, and security for you and your group. This comes from having an understanding of history so you can have a way to link up the identities that make up your identity. You know, if I say in North America, I'm African American, the brother say in Puerto Rico, I'm Puerto Rican, and the brother in Haiti says, I'm Haitian, and the brother in Trinidad says, I'm Trinidadian, and the brother in Guyana says, I'm Guyanese. Do we mean the same thing? Now, we may be meaning the same thing, but we need to have that discussion, because I think we all mean the same thing. So how do we link it up then? And that's where Africa becomes the common denominator in that thread.
Wow.
History will erase the mystery.
And that's a great way to end. Right there, history will erase the mystery. First of all, I want to thank, of course, Dr. Bob Lee, first of all, for everything that you've done with HHA, but I want to thank you for the book. Real quick, I don't know if you have the book with you on hand. If you could just put it up on the screen real quick. Yeah, there we go. People to know in Black history and beyond. You know, books like this are like gateway books that get you into the stories that we're talking about today. These stories, you know, they what can I say? These are the icons of our culture, and their stories lead you deeper into certain wisdom, certain character, certain achievements that you can actually achieve as well. Many of these people come from your same neighborhoods. Many of these people were you in their time, and that's the reason why you watch a biography or read a biography and know about the lives of your own parents, your own heritage, your own generational godmothers and godfathers, because they built the heritage that gives you value. They built the heritage that's giving you value. So again, Dr. Bob Lee, thank you for being here as well. Chuck D, you know it's always what it is. And also, my happiness is my brother's success. That's my happiness. If we can return to that, I think that just about sums it up, especially as character, as a form of character, being happy for somebody else's success, as opposed to that other thing. When somebody becomes successful, this other thing happens. I thought that was profound. And then again, thank you, Erica Ford, as well. Institutions being built so that we can carry that knowledge over, so that we can codify how we live, what we doing, and pass that on to our children. I just took notes here. We complete each other, not compete with each other. Just absolutely profound, I must say. I want to thank you all for being on this call right now. These calls will continue. Our conference continues. And keep in mind that you could also click the donation button when you go to hha.org. That's where we're at. Thank you all for joining us tonight.